Good morning, and welcome to day 152 of F260 at First Baptist Meridian. Today we look at Luke chapter 2, and there's just so many things that we could talk about with the birth of Christ, which is kind of what we're looking at all of this week from different openings of the various Gospels that we have in the Bible, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. But what I want to do today is to connect what we're talking about, what we've been talking about. So often we read about the birth of Christ and we treat it in a vacuum, and we do focus on appropriate things, such as God becoming flesh, just the metaphysical mystery of the incarnation, that a God comes in human form in the person of Jesus Christ. But if we do that, and we do that only, we miss so many of the connections that are being made with the Old Testament. And since we spent the first 30 weeks of our year in the Old Testament, I want to pick up on a few things. First of all, notice that in the opening verses of Luke chapter 2, immediately a connection is made between Jesus and King David. We are told that Joseph and Mary, because of Caesar's census, go from Nazareth down to the Jerusalem area, the city of David, which is called Bethlehem, which is just Hebrew for house of bread. If you ever get that on Jeopardy, to be registered in the census, and she is pregnant, even though they have not had relations with one another. And while they were there, the time came for her to give birth, but she ends up doing so in a manger, because there was no guest room for them. That used to be translated no room for them in the inn, but that Greek word probably suggests a guest space in a home of a distant relative. And so Jesus is born among the animals. You know, the King of Kings, the King of Glory comes, and he's not on a throne, he's in a trough. And part of what Luke is capturing is the humility embodied by God, and not only in coming in human form, but coming as a servant rather than as a sovereign. Jesus' first audience, eventually you read about the Magi, the wise men in the Gospel of Matthew. In Luke's account, he focuses on the lowly, the shepherds, right? And the night shepherds at that. Not a glorious job, and yet they're the first ones to bear witness to the birth of this Davidic Messiah. They are told that today in the city of David, a Savior was born for you, who is the Messiah, the Lord. You're seeing the fulfillment of those prophecies that the Lord himself would come and dwell among his people. And so after Jesus is born, we're told that Mary treasures up these things in her heart. Jesus is taken to the temple. What's one of the things that we're waiting for from the Old Testament? We're waiting for the glory of Zerubbabel's temple to surpass that of the temple built by Solomon, who was, surprise, surprise, the son of David. How does Zerubbabel's temple surpass the glory of Solomon's temple? That's the temple to which Jesus, the ultimate, the eschatological, fancy theological word, son of David, comes to visit himself. And so Jesus is taken there, and you're given two stories, one about a man, Simeon, and one about a woman, Anna. An important point that was made to me, this is a brief digression, is that some of the earliest witnesses to the birth of this baby were seniors. Seniors, don't count yourselves out on the plans and purposes of God. God's got stuff to show you too, no matter how old you are. But I want you to see a phrase in each of these. When Simeon sees them, it says, "This man was righteous and devout, looking forward to Israel's consolation," or comforting. Likewise, when Jesus is presented and shown to Anna, we are told that at that very moment she came up and began to thank God and to speak about him to all who were looking forward to the redemption of Israel. What's this consolation of Israel? What's this redemption of Jerusalem that the text is talking about? Again, it's looking back to the Old Testament when the people came home from exile, but didn't really feel like they were home. The exile was over in a geographic sense. They were back in the promised land, but they were under other kings. So suddenly this baby is born, and he's a son of David. He's a Messiah. He's the figure of restoration, even if restoration will look different than what was anticipated by the people. So then Jesus' family returns to Nazareth, and he grows up there, and you have a bit of foreshadowing at the end of Luke chapter 2, because every year his family makes the journey down to Jerusalem for Passover. And this is anticipating that final journey to Jerusalem where Jesus will give his life for the sins of the world as the ultimate Passover lamb. And after Joseph and Mary had left, Jesus stayed behind, and they came back to look for him. And he said, "Didn't you know that it was necessary for me to be about my Father's business, or in my Father's house?" Jesus, even though he's the son of Joseph and Mary from his earliest days, dwells among us to accomplish, demonstrate, and set forth the will of God for the people of God, and ultimately the creation of God that he came to redeem. And Luke finishes out his chapter by saying, "And Jesus increased in wisdom and stature and favor with God and men." Luke is preparing us for this ministry of Jesus, the son of David, the son of Abraham in Matthew, but ultimately the Son of God himself, God in the flesh, who comes to redeem not only Jerusalem, not only Israel, but the entire world. Keep reading, keep reflecting, keep responding, and we'll continue tomorrow. God bless.